time to start. So, welcome everyone.
Started.
Yep, we're just going to start now.
No.
Tough. So, the topic that we're going to be going over tonight is what constitutes good RP and what constitutes bad RP, and how you can help, cultivate one and improve the other. So the different things that we'll be looking at is obviously what makes good RP, what makes bad RP, how can you help cultivating a good RP, how can you improve or at least prevent bad RP, and how you can turn a good RP into a bad RP potentially, and how can you turn a bad RP into a good RP. Then we're going to analyse some examples, at least from Ancerious, from what we would consider sort of either ones, and then general thoughts afterwards. So I'll begin. So, in my opinion, what constitutes like good RP would be very broadly one where both people, or more if it's a multiplayer RP, where everyone is having fun, where everyone is enjoying themselves, where everyone is engaged, when it is active, everyone's got the flow going, everyone's on the same page, and there's no sort of issues. You're all writing good story, you're all enjoying yourselves. That's pretty much the essence of what constitutes a good RP. Obviously, the details of such is, in my opinion, it needs to be engaging. So, as I've covered in another one of these talks, you've always got to have hooks for each player in the posts. So, each post has something for each player involved so that they can respond and directly act to, which means that they can then build off of it and be positively engaged all throughout the story from beginning to end. It needs to have a clear vision and a good premise. You need to have a premise behind the RP, which is like, hey, this is what the entire RP is going to be about from start to finish. It's going to have a few twists and turns, but this is the general theme of it. Like, here's a bunch of characters that are going to go find this character. Here's a bunch of characters who are going to go take this thing back. Here's a bunch of different factions that are sending military forces to go and take down this threat. Something really simple. Keeps the premise all the way, and everyone's on the same page with it. Another thing for good RP is that all players are communicating, whether it's somebody who is GMing, or even if it's player versus player in an RP, everyone's on the same page and saying, hey, I'm going to do this next turn, it's going to be, X and X and X, just to let you guys know so I'm not pulling it out of my ass, etc. If it's like player versus player and everyone's like, yep, cool, this is all good. So long as everyone is talking to each other, coming up with potentially new ideas in the chat as well as you go, things to help contribute, then it's all good. And at the end of it, you want to have a good ending for the story and make players come away, as we've discussed before in another topic, from an RP feeling fulfilled. You want to have people come away from the RP going like, yeah, that was a good time, that was, and I really hope it leads into another plot, or, you can look back on the RP and go, man, this is actually like, this was a good time, like, this is a good example. But that's what I kind of think is, like, overall what I would constitute as good RP. Any of you guys have any more to sort of, like, add on to that side? Or is that a pretty comprehensive enough? Okay, alright, well that looks like it's pretty comprehensive enough. So, onto the whole thing of like what constitutes bad RP. This one's kind of like obvious, but in Ancerious at least, competitiveness, to the degree of causing issues. If you're going into an RP to try and win it at all costs, it's not going to end well. There's going to be arguments. There's going to be out of character disagreements. Any form of metagaming or power play or god modding instantly instantly a bad RP in my books. If there's some player in there who is trying to do those things, then it's going to be poor quality, purely because it's just been dragged down to the point where somebody's clearly trying to do that and breaking the rules to try and do so. Again, players not communicating. If people are not communicating and they're not really working together, then, I mean, in my view, like, why are they even RPing in the first place? Because if you're not going to communicate and cooperate with the other players in your roleplay, you're not role-playing, and you're not really making cooperative writing. You're just sitting around writing together and knowing that you're going to be stressed and that shit's going to come up. Being confrontational or letting like grievances get into RPs and cause like major issues, that's always going to lead to bad roleplay. And people ignoring the premise. I mean, we've got an example of a sort of, I guess, in inverted commas, bad RP. We've got a couple later on. But not having a clear premise for an RP and leading people into a story to then change it down the line, or just completely not have a premise altogether, the RP doesn't have any flow. And if your RP isn't flowing and there's not like a designated stream to wind down, even if it meanders all over the place to different things that you planned, if it doesn't really have a direction, you can't really channel it. And then what tends to happen is people don't really know what's going on or don't know where to take it, and then the posts start coming a little bit slower, and then eventually it just sort of peters out into nothing and gets abandoned, which has happened a few times in the group. So always make sure that everyone's on the main page there. But yeah, like, what constitutes bad RP? I mean, as dickish as it is to say, look at countless other servers. You'll find plenty of reasoning as to why not. But anyone else have any sort of what they would definitely think constitutes bad RP, or want to like add anything in, or ask any sort of questions?
I don't know if it really counts, but any RP which involves like a lot of accurate tracking of like rules with numbers, I think automatically like
yes,
gets things kind of down because people are just distracted with the numbers.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with this.
Yeah, so that's good. You just reminded me of that. So we call that an Ancerious gear posting, and we consider that very bad RP because an example of gear posting is normal post. X walks into a room, character-wise, yeah, or X fleet jumps in the system. Normal post is you write out why the fleet's there, maybe delve into the captain as a character or the actual character themselves. You know, why are they there? What are they thinking? What are they seeing? What's their mission? And little sort of hints to say like, oh, there's further lore in this fleet or in this character. And you sort of just describe a light appearance and you go into it. You know, it's sort of like in a book. You introduce a plot point or a character. Gear posting is when X character or X fleet enters into the RP and there's 3 paragraphs of their exact minute details. So this is Mark Clester. He is a bounty hunter. And then it immediately goes like, he has a .22 pistol that he has on his holster with a brown engraving on the very end of it. He also has 3 frag grenades made by this particular company, which also have exactly like a 5-meter blast and use this kind of shrapnel. He also has this exact armor that has magnetic grapples, and for ships it's the kind of thing of like, oh, the benevolent abyss main battleship is this class and it's exactly 4 kilometers long and it has 332 mass drivers, each 800 millimeters in diameter, capable of firing rounds up to .7. Like, nobody cares. If people are gear posting, it actively detracts from the story. because nobody gives a fuck about those minute details. Minute details like that belong in character sheets or belong in information sheets regarding ships or forces. They're the kind of things that you delve into out of the RP. You don't put them in the RP. And we have had plenty of people come into the group and basically try and gear post as like every single post that they make, and it breaks the immersion, it breaks the flow of the RP, it gives absolutely nothing for other players to reply to or interact with, and it just looks terrible, quite frankly. So yeah, no, thanks. I thought that was a really good call out there.
I just thought of something like it's not really like a way to get around gear posting, but it's like if you like do it in character where it's like a conversation, the dude's mentioning the specs, like if it's like an arms deal or something, and that would be better, right? Than just, oh yeah, this is what the character has, instead of like, oh yeah, the character pulls out a case, then the character's like, oh yeah, this does this, this does that, this is the caliber that this gun has, yada yada yada, right?
Yeah, although that would be like a very niche moment in an RP. I still don't see that being like this is X character, and then he immediately goes, oh yeah, look at all of my gear. Like,
that type of thing is highly contextual because a lot of the times the characters saying that already know that information, so they don't have a reason to go into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I have an example because like when I was doing my post with I was an old RP with Lefty, there was like a scene where like one of his characters was getting a set of power armor from my faction, and like the guy comes out and he like talks about the power armor and he lists like all the stats, like it's got a mini fusion reactor, this area. Like he was even sort of tongue in cheek because somebody else, hey, yeah, shut up, please. No.
Yeah, like that stuff's fine. It's when people like actually unironically come into the RP and basically go, okay, here's my character, and they write 5 paragraphs that are like actually pretty big paragraphs for a post, but only 2 lines out of all of that paragraph is actually relevant to the RP. Yeah, we had a very special person who joined the group at one point who his posts were virtually 99% gear posting, and boy was it bad.
Yeah. Do we need to say his name or no?
No, we don't need to go into it.
Can I just throw in the related variant of that, history posting?
Yeah, I don't mind a bit of lore posting. In my opinion, don't throw massive amounts of history and lore into one post. In my opinion, the best way to do lore posting is over like 5 replies. And you can use what the other person replies and interacts with as a way to continue the whole, like, this is this character's backstory, and it sort of tells you a little bit about it, and then the other person does an action, and it's like, this reminds him of this situation that he was in. And you kind of use it to go like that, instead of just like, this is this character, and then just 7 paragraphs of his backstory, you know?
Well, I was actually referring to TRL specifically, but...
In what way?
Oh, remember how certain folks in that group were absolutely determined to have the RP be exactly like history happened?
Oh,
Even
yeah.
though the RP wasn't about that?
Yeah. I think that comes into the whole, like, don't, like, have a clear premise for the RP. Because, again, we're going to get into some examples of good and bad RP and Ancerious later, but having no premise or a non-clear premise or changing that is one of the key factors for one of the examples that we had and have to show later. But for now, is that all on what constitutes bad RP? I think that's pretty comprehensive. Everyone knows the normal things of no god modding and being a dick, so...
Like you write something and then the person like either ignores it or just doesn't like insert, like, not like god modding, but just like, oh yeah, like they failed to like notice this detail, or they didn't like mention this detail which was important to it, but like not necessarily god modding, still kind of like irritate you because it's like, oh
Kind of the
yeah,
opposite of god modding. They straight up ignore you. So
right.
yeah, that is, I would say, bad to do in RP. Again, it's kind of contextual, but if you do right, like, I think that falls under, like, keep the RP quality on the same level. Because I've noticed that the people who do that you said, are the same people who, when you write, like, say, 4 or 5 paragraphs for a post, they only reply with, like, one. And it barely, like, acknowledges what you wrote. But I would definitely say that I think that kind of falls under, yeah, like, keep the quality of the RP at the same level. Like, reply what you would sort of expect. So if I go into an RP and I see people responding with multi-paragraph posts, I'm going to respond with multi-paragraph posts. Like, and I'm going to communicate with people for sure, because if somebody is then going to turn around and just like post half a paragraph and is going to completely ignore the lead-ins that I gave them in my post, then yeah, that I would then say to the person out of character, "Yo, you kind of just ignored like the plot hooks that I gave you."
That's what like I know like he's improved like exponentially. When he first came here, like Nova used to do that like all the time.
Yeah, there's a few players who it's kind of common when you're new, because like you're not used to such long posts.
It's like whenever like I was responding, I would actually look at like everyone's responses like a couple times over, and like when I was writing it, like a response to it, I would like put it on the tab. Like I'd have like 2 separate tabs, one so I could look at like whatever they were doing, and then my actual Google Doc that I keep all my responses on. I would type that out, and I would do them individually, like whenever I thought was more important. And that's
Yeah,
how I was able to respond better, like I usually do. Jeez.
yeah, sounds like a good way of doing things. Right, so how can you help cultivate and aid good RP? Well, as much as this is going to make every fucking member in this group have a breakdown, pinging people to keep posting regularly is a good way that you can help cultivate and aid good RP, because keeping RPs on the go at a regular pace is good. I mean, it gets everyone on the same page. Everyone keeps it fresh in their memories. If you let RPs stagnate for weeks and weeks or months, then it's not going to end well for that story. That's for certain. Another good thing to do is that, like, if people do come out and they, as we just said earlier, they kind of ignore some of your points, or they don't fully respond to your the hooks that you gave them in your post, or they kind of post a really sub-effort like response. Just ask them out of character. Communication is key. Just be like, "Yo, what's up? Like, why did you post like this thing? You kind of ignored this. You don't have to be a dick about it. Don't just be like, whoa, why didn't you do this? What the fuck? Just be polite about it. Be like, yo, you kind of missed this, or whatnot. Be helpful, and people will respond to you a lot better. Maybe they're just in a bit of a shit spot, and they want to. They just wanted to bash a post out quickly. I mean, that's completely fair enough. Another good thing to do to help cultivate good RP is, ensure that you're on, as we said, the same level of quality as the rest of the RP. Always put in what you would expect other people to put in. And always try and help encourage people to do the same. A good example is that in some of the RPs that we have here, you can see that sometimes it gets a bit low, where everyone starts sort of posting a couple sentences, etc., and it sort of starts petering out, but then somebody decides to go, you know what, I'm going to bring this back up again, and then post an absolutely massive effort post text wall, and with loads of hooks for everyone, and like loads of good shit, and everyone just goes like, holy fuck, that's actually really awesome, and then they jump in, and they start posting effort posts in response. That's a really good way to keep RPs going and to help bring up the sort of quality, is just one day just go for it in the RP. A really good example of that was Vic here with Sweet Poisons, when he pretty much came in and did like a load of effort posts and brought back the RP that was sort of slowly getting a bit quiet back to the fore. Another thing is basically just being there to help people. If people have any questions, just to aid them. Sometimes people don't quite know what they need to do, or don't even know what they want to do in some, especially some of the more crazy situations in combat RPs. Just help them. Be there and help them. You can't get much nicer than that. But yeah, generally just be a good member of the community, be there to help people in the RPs, keep the RPs to a good standard, and keep them flying regularly. And you'll be on the way to a good story at the end of the day. Communicate, be there for them. Unless anyone has any other sort of things to add to that, that's pretty much that particular topic.
Yeah, no, I just want to say, like, yeah, just like because I know I'm one of those people who will sometimes like misread or misinterpret parts of a post. And Mirek, you've seen this happen in our stuff, the Unholy Reaper.
Yeah.
Times now, read party, and then like you just bring it up, and you're like, going on here, and I'm like, oh, okay, I can fix that, And it's just because I'm an idiot who, for some reason, misreads posts all the time.
It's alright. Sometimes when people skim over posts, when there's like a massive effort post, I know I've done it a couple of times in Unholy 2, but that's mostly because there's like 6 people fighting me on like 5 different fronts with an absolute metric shit ton of like situations happening, and I can kind of sometimes skip over things where I'm like, I'll focus on this bit. But yeah, like if that's what happens, just point it out to people. Don't be a dick about it. Just be like, hey, you missed this part in the post or whatever, and they can just go back and edit.
Yeah.
Makes it much easier and nicer for people. But yes, okay, so how can you improve or at least prevent bad RP? Well, first off, in Ancerious, that's kind of somewhat done for everyone by the admins and the rules. Have a good set of rules, have a good set of people who are going to follow them. Us admins and also the guides keep an eye on most of the RPs that are going on. Any sort of sneaky or suspicious stuff we tend to sort of bring up in the chat and be like, yo, what's going on here? And then a few of us will get together, read through the whole RP, and then be like, oh, okay, no, never mind. It's in context here, or we'll be like, they're not supposed to be doing that, and we'll get involved and try and say, yo, this isn't ideal. If you want to improve a bad RP, it does contextually depend on what's going on at the time. If you've got RPs that are very directionless, well, maybe just give them a premise. Even if it is halfway through the RP, it's better to go in and give it a solid premise than start with a solid premise and have it peter out into completely nothing, because at least, you've got a mindless mess of gobbledygook at the start, at least it starts leading somewhere later on. If you see in any bad RP metagaming, or god modding, or power play, just immediately point it out. Don't like say, "Oh well, you know, I'll let it slide." You know, they're not doing anything too bad, or "Oh well, you know, the guy's new. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt." Like, no, if you see that, just don't be a dick. Just be like, "Yo, you're breaking the rules here. Like in this particular instance, you know, you're not really allowed to do that. Just edit it out, and you'll be all right." Like, you know, we're not just going to turn up and instantly black mark someone. You know, if somebody does it and then just goes, "Oh yeah, sorry," like, my apologies. Maybe they got too carried away writing something. It's all good. If it does get done maliciously in, like, you know, somebody's having a disagreement in an RP and they decide to do it, then yeah, call them out or ping one of the admins or one of the guides, and they can bring it up to us. You know, one of us is bound to be online. We'll sort it out. We don't tolerate that sort of thing. Same with, you know, people like pissing around and doing all bits and bobs. I also recommend that if you've got an OOC chat for an RP, don't let people sort of just spam it with like off-topic discussion. Like, it's all well and good if you all start discussing like, "Hey, you know, what do you think about this particular thing for the RP?" And you all start like discussing all things on topic. That's cool. Like, but say something happens in the RP, like one player does something a little bit stupid, and then all of a sudden 6 players start coming in and having a discussion over how the stupid thing is stupid, but they have no tie to the RP whatsoever. Just tell them to go to like main chat or something. It's not worth it, and it kind of detracts and derails and pisses people off sometimes. But on the most hand, like with bad RP, if an RP is going a bit badly, just, you know, if even if you're doing it with other people, just ping the admins or like ping other people. Just be like, "Hey, you know, this RP's kind of gone a bit directionless," or "Hey, this RP's getting a bit iffy," or "Hey, we're having a bit of a problem between us players." Just ping us and just be like, "Can we get some assistance?" And we'll try our best. Like, we'll come in and be like, "Right, let's help you get a premise going," or "Hey, let's see what we can do about like a potential idea to get the story rolling," or "Hey, let's have everyone, you know, sit back and chill a bit and discuss and sort out any issues." So yeah, like, if something's going wrong or something's slow or something's bad, just ping us and we'll try and help. You know, don't just let RPs rot or suffer because, you know, people can't be bothered or whatnot, you know? I think that's pretty much on how to like improve and prevent bad RP. Other than don't RP on a fair few servers that I'm part of. That's my other bit of advice. Anyone got anything on that topic, or?
Yo. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, just about.
I can hear you pretty good.
Alright, cool. Just from personal experience, I think keeping like RPs simple in mechanics and stuff, I think it's a must. Don't do like what I did for Treasonous Waste and Siege of Orevo. Basically, I tried to implement like some complicated mechanics like time limits, and it didn't really work out because people were not really posting on time. I also can't post on time because I was busy. So yeah, that's just like a piece of advice from experience.
Okay. So don't try to overcomplicate RPs and stuff. That makes sense.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone else got anything? I see. So we're going to go on and give some situations where how can a good RP turn into a bad RP? So I will bring out the first sort of example. Now we're going to be using examples from Ancerious history, obviously. So the first example that I'm going to use is a story called Uprising. And I can already hear TK and Victor and Eamon cringing. So, so I'm not going to take you through the whole story. Pretty much, the whole premise of the RP was that there was a strategically important world for the entire galaxy, and there was a big social and societal uprising led by a particular character, and he was rallying a load of the disparate factions and insurgents and opposition from across the galaxy. And they'd all hold up on this one place, and the rest of the galaxy had to go take it back. And it was supposed to be a way for us to do some ground battles and RP, some character stuff, a little bit of fleet stuff, and some politics. Okay? That was the premise. That was the whole foundational groundwork for the RP. Now, we went in and we had a space battle. Okay, there was a few bits in the space battle that were iffy, but that was because of certain players. However, the space battle for the most part was fun and went well. However, the problems happened when we got to the actual start of the RP. The RP had one GM who, okay, in hindsight, let's just say, wasn't the best person to be running an RP. However, he then took on a second GM who then also wasn't the best person to be running the RP. Now, these two people then decided to change some of the premises and change some of the mechanics involved. And this got so bad that it was almost changing on an hourly basis. Before we knew it, suddenly we weren't fighting this revolutionary leader, we were fighting this super ancient bad guy that could only be defeated by Deus Ex Machina belonging to the one GM player. The next thing we know, some guy's entire force got deleted and god modded. The next thing I knew, I had one of my forces god modded. Me and the member Neo, we sent in our special forces to go and have this cool Star Wars-esque lightsaber duel with the head honcho, only to effectively get shut down and be forced to fight this head honcho's most basic infantry grunts that were supposedly on par with our strongest people in the galaxy, and it just turned into a clusterfuck. And because they kept changing and changing and changing, and then god modding and saying, oh well, we're the GMs, we get to do what we want. It just turned what had started off as an actual decent premise, an RP, and just turned it into an absolute slog. And it got to the point where there was months before, between posts, the RP got so bad that punishments were meted out to the GMs. In the end, both of the GMs actually got banned, and we kind of had to semi-retcon some things and then tie up the RP. But that was an example of good things going bad in that instance. There was absolutely fuck all communication between the GMs and the players. The GMs would talk to each other and they wouldn't talk to us players. So we thought we were going to be assaulting a city, and the next minute an orbital city that we got told we needed to take and capture got dropped on some guy's head and his entire force got wiped out in an instant. It was literally on the dime. Oh, this changed. Oh, you got screwed. Oh, this changed. Oh, you got screwed. It was really not good. Textbook example of premise being changed, god modding and metagaming going into an RP, and stuff changing on a whim with poor communication between players. Let's think. Anyone else got a good example of a good RP in Ancerious that got turned bad? I know some of you haven't been here for a huge amount of time, but
You already talked about the rescue mission, so
yeah.
that was
Vic, have you got any examples from your astute memory?
Of what? Of RPs turning bad?
Yeah, like a good RP turning bad.
Well, good RP means that fucking Extremophiles doesn't count.
No, that's for the next bit.
Yeah, I don't think thing brings to memory.
Okay. I guess a second one would be something that Pickle here remembers, which is the Dirge, the Voliant system core war, which started off on the premise of a regional conflict contained to the southeast of the galaxy, where this devouring swarm and this sort of like rogue AI teamed up to fight a bunch of nations. Unfortunately, what started off to be like, hey, here's a regional war to get all of you guys involved and get stuff going, turned into, hey, we're going to absolutely dunk on new players and completely try to abuse and loophole the rules to be able to instant gib the new players' fleets from across the system in literally one turn. And there's nothing they can do to stop it. Not only that, but we're going to drag in as many new players as possible and then cause as many, like, incidents as possible with said players and just antagonize them OOC and cause them to, like, slog it out in everything. Again, like, at the end of that, one player actually got banned. Another one left. And it just was not a good time all round, where it could have had this really good premise of like a regional conflict to be like, hey, new people, here's this sort of like small conflict to get you into the group and on the galactic stage, and, you know, forming this sort of power block alliance that could get you on your feet, and just got abused because people wanted to power trip and be arseholes and be competitive. So, yeah, again, that sort of ended with a ban and somebody leaving, and pretty much resulted in an auto resolve and some like write-outs. But that's another like example of like potentially good RP that at the very start had like quite a lot of premise, just getting completely railroaded off the tracks by dickish behaviour, effectively. Anyone else got any examples? Doesn't have to be from Ancerious, by the way. Okie dokie. So, the next bit is examples of how can a bad RP turn into a good RP. And Vic, I will let you lead on this one.
Wait, what am I supposed to
talk about extremophiles and how an absolutely appallingly bad RP got turned good?
But I don't even think that Extremophiles applies, because it was really this sort of last chance RP with a problem member, Raptor, that had been a complete pest for a while, just refused to improve, just constantly bring up like every single thing that Marek told you not to do. He just did nothing but that for months upon months on the server. And then we were on the brink of banning him, and then we offer, okay, this guy quite clearly wants to just write some like Warhammer fantasy, Warhammer 40k sort of recreation in Ancerious. He clearly sucks at everything else. So are we just we're just gonna sort of recreate his little Warhammer plot using Ancerious elements and see how it goes? And it didn't go well, because he turns out he wasn't good at RPing sort of ersatz space marines either. He just, because of the gear posting, he had written up that his soldiers had like nuclear grenades and stuff that they ended up using in the middle of the RP, in the middle of a fight with all of his allies close by. So he just blew up the entire fucking place. Like this was supposed to be like okay, we're gonna. your space marines and these other guys, warriors, find the first like little fortress outposts of the enemy, and if you capture it, you're gonna be able to find out where the electrical lines lead to. And they were sort of fighting the bad guys. I was just giving each player some stuff to react to, some enemies to kill, etc., etc. And this guy just like inexplicably all of a sudden, like almost as if he was just straight up wanting to sabotage the thing from the start, just nuked the entire place. And well, after that, obviously the original plot of just capturing each fortress one by one was out of the question because most of the good guys teams were dead. So I just said, all right. So let's instead have it that your nuke sets off a bunch of volcanic explosions, and now the goal is to escape. And then he didn't escape, and he died, and he got rid enough. Then we managed to turn it into like the remaining player and me. We managed to turn it into an actually entertaining story of like first of all like outrunning this enormous volcanic blast that was set off by the nukes, and then finding refuge in a sort of underground bunker where there's like treasure, and we turn it into like this dungeon treasure hunt. But it's good, and it's still going, and it's entertaining because the one person who is still left in it is actually good at writing. But I as I was saying, I'm not 100% sure if it's what you mean, because this RP turned good just by getting rid of the bad member. Like there was no writing thing that happened to suddenly make him post good things.
That's true, I guess. I'd still say it counts, but
So yeah, I guess get rid of the people posting stupid stuff is always should always be like an option.
yeah, I mean, like, it's kind of harsh, but at the end of the day, if you're RPing with a particular person or a group of people who, you know, are consistently dragging down the quality of roleplay, if they're not making it fun for you, if they're making it a slog and a drag to RP with, just don't RP with them. It's as simple as that. Like, it might sound like the most simplest answer in the world, but honestly, when you realise that, hey, if I just don't RP with these guys, I could actually, like, have some fun, then, yeah, just don't do it. I mean, trying to think of another example of, like, a bad RP turning good. I mean, I guess the only other example that I have is, like, the Shadows arc, where it had this excellent premise and right up at the start. Unfortunately, because there was some IRL difficulties between numerous players, and there was a bit of distrust between some of the players involved, it went from this like regional dimensional incursion where everyone was supposed to band together to fight it, to this dimensional incursion that only several players were actually taking with any seriousness, because the rest of the players just straight up chose to ignore it, purely because they didn't like the player involved. And then it kind of like spiraled, and it got really bad because obviously you've got a plot that's ongoing where several people are just refusing to acknowledge this like actual legitimate in-character threat, while other people are legitimately trying to fight it, and those people who are legitimately trying to fight it are trying to call the other people saying, hey, there's this big threat, we need to fight it, and the other people are obviously going like, nope, doesn't exist, nope, no, we're not getting involved. Like, so it kind of drove the arc into a pretty big rut where nobody wanted to post. A load of the sort of side quests that were going to be written for it had to be written off. But in the end, we managed to salvage it and at least tie it up with a good ending, where I pretty much came and I said, look, we're going to do this. I pretty much turned to all the people who were involved and said, right, this is happening, irregardless of whether you don't want to, interact or not. this is happening. You will face the repercussions from this. And I said, right, I'm going to write with you, and I extended a hand, and I said, right, I'll write with you some small skirmishes and the like. And I got most of the players who were involved in some capacity or didn't want to get themselves involved to write and to actually be involved in that arc. Again, like, sort of, people were getting back into it, and I said, in the end, I was like, look, the arc's kind of run its course anyway, and there's bigger fish that are coming in the story-wise. So I said, I'm going to, get this plot sort of written out in a decent way. And we had like a battle, like the battle over Askandar. That was a good plot. As one of the later RPs for it, that was good. That was a good plot. Also, me and Lucas did our Battle of Anderson. That was a great plot as well. We had good fun with that, where the Shadows took his system and then he took it back later. And then finally we wrapped it up with them closing the portal and getting the Shadows out of this dimension with the big final battle, where I pretty much said, all right, everyone turn up and we'll just have this final showdown. And I basically made it so that, everyone was having their impact, everyone took heavy losses, but they all had moments to shine where, they would step in front of fire for another one of the player fleets and have a valiant suicide defense, or they would unleash some super weapon that they'd brought to break through a particular strategy that the Shadows had employed to try and stop them. And it, in the end, they obviously closed the portal and the Shadows got destroyed. And that was the whole it's done, it's wrapped up now. While the beginning of the arc was shaky and the middle of the arc was pretty bad, at least, the later bits where everyone kind of came to work together and, everyone got thrown down onto the table and said, hey, let's communicate, let's work together. We got a good wrap-up out of it, and we got several good RPs out of it at the ending. So...
Okay, I'm just going to throw in my 2 cents on the Shadow arc, because there's something that has to be mentioned there. It went wrong initially for 2 reasons. 2 additional reasons that weren't mentioned. First and foremost, you had a GM who would say one thing to a bunch of people and then say something entirely different to another bunch of people who were also in the RP. So we got inconsistent messaging. There was also the fact that the GM who was originally running it was absolutely adamant that basically once you're involved, you're stuck with it. There's no options, period, end of story, which is a terrible thing to tell players right off.
Yeah.
It felt like he was trying to ram it down everybody's throats. And yes, Shadows were a major issue. But that worked against him and nearly killed the arc.
Yeah, that was one of the major issues of the arc. It kind of... Instead of it being put forward as an organic threat, it did kind of get rammed down the throats of multiple people, and that is what turned off quite a lot of the players from it. And then instead of saying, alright, yeah, that's fair enough, and tried to get some communication going, it was like, oh, well, this is happening whether you like it or not. But at least later on, communication was re-established and opened up, and sort of things were actually laid out and wrapped up.
Said GM is not doing much of anything now, but
well.
Can't help that shit.
So him has said one example of a good RP being ruined is an extreme attachment to a character to the point where they have more plot armor than the Star Wars cast, i.e. dodging several magazines worth of bullets, multiple shotgun blasts, and even godmodding other person's character's actions to prevent the death of X character. Yeah, I can see that being a serious thing. In my opinion, if you have a situation where your character is going to die in an RP, well, first off, character death isn't common, and usually when people put a character into a state of, threat, you can usually work out with the other person, hey, I kind of want so-and-so to survive, and you can figure something out. However, if it is the case where you've pretty much said, if you continue to do this, bad things are going to happen, and you kind of, hint in like 5 posts in a row that if they continue to do what they're doing, they're going to die. And it gets to the point where it's like, okay, you kept doing this thing, now you're going to die. And they then start going like, oh, well, no, my character doesn't die. Then, yeah, that is a bad RP route. And you will need to try and say to them like, yo, you ignored all of this stuff. Now you've got to pay the consequences. So yeah, like, yeah, it's definitely an example that I've also seen before with some stuff. Funny enough, there was an example of that in Uprising, where a legendary squadron leader called Constitutes took a bunch of fighters into an asteroid field, which was of course an ambush. And when the ambushers detonated all of the nuclear weapons, the fighters took absolutely no damage because apparently they had taken the IFFs off all of their fighters and just sent them into the asteroid field as like a lure. So everyone and Constitutes were all fine. Although hilariously later on that came back to bite him in the ass, because when he decided to try and cover a friendly ship with his legendary fighter squadron, the Allied ships shot them all out of the sky because they didn't have any IFFs and they thought it was an enemy attack. So, you know, karma. But, yes, so...
Are we going to for Lee?
Is it even worth bringing that up?
Okay, well... yeah, but it's a textbook case of extreme obsession with a character's success or failure, though.
That is true. My advice is, when it comes to character death, always kind of be prepared for it. I mean, this goes for tabletop more than like text-based roleplay, but we did have a situation in this group where somebody's character died, not through any malicious intent. It was the choice of either the party gets torn apart by this weird demon entity, or this guy like continues to sustain a psionic power which will kill the entity but also kill one of the party members. And obviously the guy chose to kill the demon but also unfortunately kill the party member. And we had a serious incident for a couple months after that where the party member would not stop going on about the character death, and it caused serious controversy, blow-ups, aggression, and more. Thankfully, it all got resolved in time, and it's all good now, and everyone's on good terms. But yeah, that was a case of like, maybe, you know, try to separate yourself between in-character and out-character. Like, I know that, you know, dice-based tabletops, you can get quite attached to your characters, but, you know, there's limits, you know. You don't want to have a massive blow-up and ruin the RP for everyone. But as I said, that turned out well in the end, so I guess that just sort of leaves the sort of like general thoughts. Like, has anyone got anything to bring up? Any more examples? Any more ideas of what's good and bad? Or I see. I guess that will be it for this particular topic for today. But if you guys have any questions or anything that you want to bring up, regardless of topic, then feel free to do so.